Just because I haven't made a podcast doesn't mean I haven't been knitting. Hi everybody, I'm back. Life was crazy for a second, and then it calmed down, and then I lost my mojo, and now I'm here. So I hope that this means that I have my mojo back because I really miss making podcasts. My hesitation is probably surrounding the editing portion of this. So this is my reintroduction to knitting podcasts. Thank you all for being here. Let me tell you what happened for a second. Here's a little backstory. My last podcast was in June, and it was when I graduated from college, and then I moved from where I was going to college back home, like moved all my stuff into where I'm living right now. And between all that and the craziness with family, then my boyfriend and I went to Europe for 5 weeks and traveled all around. It was the most amazing trip. Maybe I'll insert some photos of us gallivanting around Europe. It was pretty incredible. And then I came back, and then again, family was here, and then my best friend got married, and I was her maid of honor, so I was like in her wedding and dealing with all the wedding stuff. And then I was in my post-college life. What the heck am I gonna do now? I've been working at my dad's business, and I've been also tutoring. I got my degree in mechanical engineering, and I really love math and science, so I've been tutoring high school students while we kind of figure out what the next step is in our lives. Max is applying to grad school, so we're planning on moving it within the next year. So anyway, this has been like kind of a crazy period in life. Also, because I was in Europe all summer and because it was hot all summer, I wasn't really knitting or crocheting a ton. I really only had one finished object the whole summer, which I will show you in this video. But since then, I have gotten my knitting and crochet mojo back. I've made a lot of stuff, so this video is going to be very finished object heavy, kind of rapid fire, go through all of them, just because I like documenting everything that I've made, and I haven't been very good about updating my Ravelry, so this is going to be my conclusion. Everything that's happened in the last, how many months has that been? June, July, August, September, November, 4 months. It'll still follow pretty standard podcast format though. I'll show you my one work in progress. Well, I have many whips, but my one like active whip, and then also my future plans at the end of the video. So if you're interested in hearing any of that, sorry for the really long introduction and background as to what's been happening, but let's get into it. As always, I will put photos of everything that I'm talking about on the screen right here because I appreciate that most when I'm watching podcast videos. And if you have any questions, please comment them. I want to know what you're knitting on while you're watching this video. I want to know what you're planning to make and for your next project. I want to know how your summer and fall have been because I haven't talked to you guys in a while. I also want to mention that I am very much more active on TikTok and Instagram. So if you want to follow me over there, please do so. I pretty much post daily updates on TikTok now. I love TikTok. Always love TikTok. It's like kind of my guilty pleasure. I'm also going to change how I think about YouTube. I was trying really hard to make one video a week. And I even had all these plans for videos I was going to pre-record in June before I moved to be able to post throughout the 5 weeks that I was gone. And then because life got so crazy, I ended up not being able to record or edit any of those videos. So now I think my approach to YouTube is just going to be when I want to sit down and record a podcast, I'll sit down and record a podcast. If I want to make any kind of alternative video to go in between the podcasts, then I'll make those. But if you really want to keep up with my knitting and crochet and stuff, please follow me on TikTok and Instagram. Let's get into it. I want to start with what I'm wearing. So this is the Winnie Sweater by Woozy by Celine. I was one of the test knitters for this pattern in June, and I knit this in Drops Air. I think I used 5 balls total of Drops Air. This pattern is lovely, like so good. Celine did such a good job writing this pattern. There were pretty much no errors. She has some really cool techniques for the finishing details. The whole thing is stockinette, so you do this really cool technique to prevent the stockinette from rolling on the sleeves and on the collar and on the hem. It also has this beautiful funnel neck detail and the bell sleeves, which are just so dramatic and elegant, and I love them so much. I knit this on the needles of the pattern recommends, which I think is 5.5 millimeter. I would highly recommend this pattern for everybody, but especially if you're a beginner. I would say it's written really well. She has video tutorials for any confusing steps. Like instead of German short rows, there are Japanese short rows, I think, that we use to get the back of the neck to sit higher than the front of the neck. And it was a really cool technique to learn. It's actually a set-in sleeve construction. Is that what this is called? Where you have your raglan stitches here and you're increasing on the outsides of the raglan as you increase the size of the yoke, and then you stop increasing on the outside and you increase on the inside to open up the sleeve. And then you put all your stitches on hold, and then you knit to the body in a tube, and then you pick up stitches underneath the arms a little bit, and then you knit the sleeve, and there's some increases to create this really cool bell shape. Also, I love the yarn. Okay, so I've been figuring out recently, well, really since I started knitting with wool, that I am very sensitive to wool. Wool is itchy for me. No matter what the wool is I've used so far, it's all been itchy. This yarn has been the most comfortable to wear next to skin. Right now I only have a tank top on underneath this, and it's totally fine on my neck and arms. It is itchy, like I feel it, but it's not unbearably itchy like some of my other knits. I believe Drops Air is 28% polyamide, like a plastic core. It's a blown yarn, so it's a polyamide core. Maybe I'll insert a photo of what the strand looks like, with alpaca and wool blown throughout it. I think it's like 75% alpaca and 8% wool, so it's mostly alpaca. And maybe it's just that I'm specifically sensitive to wool and not so much to alpaca, or maybe I'm less sensitive to alpaca. I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet. I believe Celine knit hers in Sager's version of blown yarn, which is more wool. I think it has a cotton core with wool. But that was a little out of my price range, and Drops Air was much more budget friendly. So if you're gonna knit this, I would highly recommend Drops Air. If you're gonna knit anything, honestly, I would recommend Drops Air. I believe it's a worsted gauge. It's a very light and airy yarn, so you get a lot of meterage for the gauge. But yes, so this is my Winnie sweater. Absolutely love it. Don't know if I have any more to say about it. I don't have it on Ravelry. Maybe this video will give me the little push I need to update my Ravelry with all these finished objects. My next finished object is my 7 p.m. tank by Tiffany Ty. This was in my spring knitting plans and my summer knitting plans video, or summer knitting inspiration video. And I actually did make it, which I'm very proud of myself for making this. This was the only thing I took with me to Europe, and I did knit on it a little bit, but again, I didn't have a ton of time to knit, even though I was spending a lot of time on trains. I don't know what was happening. I just was not in the knitting I didn't have my knitting mojo. Like I just didn't want to be knitting, but I did finish this in August. So I started it in June and finished it in August. I knit this on 2.5 millimeter needles, and I used Rowan Summerlite 4-ply, which is an Egyptian cotton. It's a fingering weight yarn. I believe the pattern calls for 2.75 millimeter needles, but I didn't have 2.75 millimeter needles, so I used 2.5, and it worked out totally fine. I'll insert some photos. I'll stop holding this up and just insert some photos of me wearing it. This is the first knit tank top that I've made, and I don't know if I will knit any more tank tops. I don't know if knitting tank tops is for me. I don't love knitting on such a small gauge for a relatively large garment. Like 2.5 millimeter needles for a tank top, even though the tank top is extremely cropped, wasn't so much fun. Actually, okay, let me tell you about the construction of this. So you knit the waist panels in 3 pieces. You start with this front piece here. So see there's a seam right here, and you knit this sideways. So it's a really long rectangle, and then you knit 2 smaller rectangles here. So there's again the seam all the way to here, and again the seam all the way to here, and then you sew them all together, and then you knit this ribbed panel from bottom up. So these panels are knit side to side, and the ribbed panel is knit bottom up, and it kind of just lets the tank top cinch in at the back. And then once you have this tube around your waist, you pick up stitches under your bust and knit from here up to do the top part. And once you get to right under the armpits, you cast off about all these stitches in the back, and then you knit the triangles with these as you pick up stitches here, then you knit these bust darts, which is a very nice little detail. And then you knit, after you cast off the stitches in the back, then you knit these triangles, and then you pick up stitches here and here, I think. No, sorry. Then you cast off, what did I do? Yeah, do you pick up stitches? I don't really remember if you pick up stitches or if you leave them on and you only cast off in between them. I don't know if it matters how much. But then the straps are double knit straps. So they're not I-cord. Maybe the photo will show them better. They're not I-cord, they are double knit straps. Knitting these straps was quite challenging. It took so long, and I actually had the tank top finished for probably a month, but I just had like the last 3 inches of one of the second strap to do, and I could not bring myself to do it. So this was kind of languishing for about a month, but I eventually finished it at the end of August. I haven't had a chance to wear it out and about. Like, I only wore it to take photos of it because then it got cold. So that's kind of a bummer. But next summer I will have a knit tank top for me to wear. Okay, my next finished object is my Esther sweater. This is a pattern by Petite Knit, and this is my first Petite Knit pattern, which I think is pretty crazy. I absolutely loved this pattern, and I absolutely love this sweater. So I can totally see why everybody loves Petite Knit. I'm definitely planning to knit a couple more of her patterns in the future. I knit this in Drops Lima. I just held 1 strand single on 4mm needles, which I think is the needle size that the pattern recommends. This sweater is a really cool knit and purl texture. So there's the whole thing that you get this whole really cool texture with just a combination of knits and purls. You start by casting on at the back of the neck right here, and then you knit this trapezoidal situation until you get it to be here underneath the armpits. Oh no, sorry. Over here under the armpits. And then you pick up stitches on the back of the shoulders and you knit the shoulders up and over, and then you join them underneath the neck right here. And then you knit the front panel, and then you attach them underneath the sleeves. You knit the body in the round, and then you pick up stitches for the sleeves, and you knit the sleeves in the round. Pick up stitches around the collar, and you knit a ribbed collar, and then fold it over, so it's a folded over ribbed collar. In the pattern photos and some of the photos that I saw on people's Ravelry project pages, the sleeves kind of looked like they were ballooning out here. Maybe I'll just insert a photo so you can see what I'm talking about. The sleeves kind of seemed like they were ballooning out from the shoulder, which I didn't love so much. I really wanted it to be a seamless transition. So the first modification that I made was I knit the body a little bit longer than the pattern said to, so that the pickup rate for the sleeves matched the arm circumference. And I think I got a much more even transition from the from the body to the sleeves. I also knit all of my rib inside out, which I forget who gave me this tip. If I can remember, I will make sure to mention them because it's honestly genius. So I always have found that this is like technically the outside of my end that's like partially woven in. This is certainly like what the outside of my ribbing looks like. And I always feel like the inside of my ribbing, like the side of the ribbing that's facing away from me, is always neater than the side that's facing me. So I actually did a short row turn at the base of the sleeves. Well, actually for all the ribbing, I did a short row turn, so the inside became the outside of my sleeve. So this is what my ribbing would have looked like if I didn't do the short row turn, and this is what it looks like with the short row turn. I don't even know if you can really tell a difference, but I can tell. So that's why I did that, because I always feel like the inside of my ribbing is neater than the outside of my ribbing. And I did that also for the hem and for the collar. So I picked up stitches. For the collar, I picked up stitches and then immediately did a short row turn to go back the other way. So the seam is still like on the inside of the collar, but the ribbing that's on the outside is the inside, if that makes any sense. Okay. Another feature of this sweater that I really wanted to make sure I got right was on the back. I really wanted these seams here on the back of the shoulder to go right down on the arm. In the pattern, when it tells you to pick up stitches, it just tells you to pick up X number of stitches. It doesn't tell you how many stitches to pick up before you get to this line versus how many stitches to pick up after you get to that line. So it took a little bit of trial and error to figure out how to figure out the right number of stitches to pick up from underneath the armpit to this line to get this seam to line up exactly. Basically, this pattern right here on the top of the sleeve follows a chart, and it's a 25 stitch chart. And you pick up, well, for my size, I think I picked up a total of 50 stitches, which left 25 stitches before this seam and 25 stitches for the moss stitch after you do the pattern on the chart. After I figured that out, then it wasn't that hard to figure out the pickup rate. Because also there are fewer stitches. I mean, right now after I blocked it, it looks perfectly even, like the same number of stitches on this side as there are on this side. But because of the seam right here, there's actually more stitches on this side than there are on this side. So after some trial and error, I figured it out. The seam lines up perfectly and I'm quite happy. Oh, if you follow me on TikTok or Instagram, you know that this sweater like the transformation of blocking this sweater was insane. Maybe I'll insert a little clip of before and after, because this is all moss stitch and purl sections and more moss stitch. It was like so shrunken in, both horizontally and vertically. I'm kind of short. I'm only 5'4" and my torso isn't very long. And I also always wear high-waisted pants. And I really like my sweaters to sit right at belt level. Like when sweaters are longer on me, because I also have a larger bust circumference, I can look a little boxy. Personally, I don't like it on me. So I really like my sweaters to sit right at belt level. And I was really worried about knitting the pattern too long on this sweater. So I spent quite a lot of time looking at project photos on Instagram, people's TikToks, trying to figure out how many repeats they did of this motif. And I realized that it was 6 repeats. So starting counting this like half one, it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But it was so cropped on me when I finished the 6th repeat that I decided to do an extra half. So I ended up doing 6.5 of the repeats and then doing the ribbing. And before blocking, this was so cropped. I've already knit my step-by-step sweater striped version in Drops Lima, held with Drops brushed alpaca silk. And that sweater grew so much with blocking, so I knew that this was also going to grow with blocking. I was right. After blocking, it did grow, and I think that it fits me perfectly. So I'll insert some photos of me wearing the sweater. I think I've worn this sweater the most out of any sweater that I've knit so far, except for my first step-by-step sweater, despite the fact that it's incredibly itchy. Like, if you are sensitive to wool, I do not recommend Drops Lima. The reason that I don't wear my second step-by-step sweater is because it's also knit in Drops Lima, and it's just so itchy that I always reach for my first step-by-step sweater, which I knit in an acrylic yarn, which I know acrylic isn't the best, but it's just so comfortable, like I can just wear it. I love the pattern of this sweater so much that I've just been wearing it despite the fact that it's itchy. So I think I've worn it 4 times now since I've finished it, and I finished it about a month ago, which is kind of a lot for me to wear something that's itchy. I went on a trip to New York City with my mom and I wore it there. It was the perfect sweater to wear on a cold November day in New York. I did wear a long sleeve shirt underneath it. So with a long sleeve shirt underneath it, it's much more bearable, but it does need to be quite cold for me to be able to layer something underneath it. I was kind of hoping that this would just be a lounge around the house type sweater in addition to a going out sweater. But it's too warm and too itchy to just be able to wear inside. I definitely need to be like outside with a layer underneath it. Anyway, that being said, I love the pattern. Would highly recommend the pattern. Wouldn't so much recommend the yarn. To give the yarn some credit, it doesn't pill. This yarn so far in my 4 times of wearing it with a lot of friction, like I wore it in New York City, we were walking around all day long. It really doesn't, it hasn't pilled at all. It looks just as perfect as it did when I was right off the needles. I guess there's a little bit of pilling. Oh, maybe I should look before I say something next time. There's like very, very minimal pilling just underneath the arms where in the high friction areas. There is my Esther sweater. My next 6 finished objects, 7, I don't even know how many there are all hats, because I'm on a mission to knit as many hats as I can before the holidays come. Everybody's getting a hat. Everybody that I love is getting a hat this year. But let's start with the hat that started my hat obsession, and this is the Musselburgh hat by Isolde. It's a swatchless pattern, which is super cool because it means that you don't need to gauge swatch before casting on. You can use anything from a lace weight to a DK weight yarn, and you just use the size needles that are recommended for your yarn. And then there's a little section in the pattern where you measure your gauge, and it tells you, okay, if this is your gauge, this is how many stitches you should increase to before just making the rest of the hat. I knit this in Madeline Tosh Fingering. It's a 100% superwash merino wool in the color Found Pottery. It's the first time I've ever used hand-dyed yarn, and this yarn was actually gifted to me by one of my mutuals on social media. So thank you, Peggy. I absolutely love this yarn and love this beanie so much. If you haven't heard of the Musselburgh, here is your awakening because it is an incredible pattern, and there's a reason why I think over 20,000 people have made this on Ravelry, which means that even more people have made it because people make it and people knit things and don't make project pages all the time. Me, which one day, hopefully soon, I will make a project page for this hat, but it's such a cool construction. So you cast on at the top, it's like 8 stitches or something, a super tiny amount of stitches, and then you increase in these 4 quadrants, that'll focus, before you get to the circumference that you want, and then you knit a super long tube before exactly mirroring, and you decrease at the end and you close it all up at the bottom. I knit the beginnings and endings with all the increases and decreases using magic loop. That's my preferred method of knitting on small circumferences, but I think that a lot of people use DPNs, double pointed needles. I've never used double pointed needles because I don't want to buy more things and I already have a whole interchangeable knitting needle set. So like, why not just use magic loop? Anyway, the beginning of this pattern was a bit confusing, and I think that that's the case for a lot of people. And luckily, Isolda, the designer of this pattern, has a YouTube channel, and she made a whole tutorial for how to start this beanie. So honestly, it was like super easy, fun, mindless knit. I knit this in about a week. I brought it with me to visit my friend in San Francisco, and I knit it in the car, and I knit it while we were down there. And then it was just like a lot of stockinette in the round, which is perfect for TV knitting, perfect for knitting while you're sitting around with family. Oh, I guess I was folding it the other way. And it used almost the entire 100-gram skein of the Madeline Tosh Fingering. So if you have one skein of really special hand-dyed yarn, would highly recommend the Musselburgh because you can use any weight and you get a beautiful, beautiful beanie. I'll insert some photos of me wearing the beanie because if I put on every beanie I'm about to show you, my hair would look insane by the end of this video. After making the Musselburgh, I really wanted to make a bunch of beanies for people for the holidays, for my family for the holidays. And I didn't want to make the Musselburgh again because it's so much stockinette, and it took, making it one time was amazing, and I would probably make the pattern again, but I really wanted something that would be a little bit faster, and I thought that a DK version of the Musselburgh would be a little too thick on the brim. Because it's double folded, it's 2 layers on your head and then 4 layers around your forehead, which I think with a DK weight yarn would be a little bit too thick. So then I decided to knit the Oslo Hat. And this is my first Oslo hat that I knit. I knit it in Drops Extrafine Merino, which is a 100% superwash DK weight merino yarn. This hat is amazing. Oh my god, do I love this pattern. Okay, so you start by casting on a certain number of stitches. You knit until you get double the length of the brim that you want. Then you fold it over and knit your live stitches with your cast on edge to get so this is a double folded brim right here. And then you keep knitting a little bit more, which is what this purl section is, before you do a short row turn to turn it around so that when you fold up the brim of the hat, it looks like it's all stockinette. And that also means that the brim is triple folded, not quite quadruple folded, but triple folded, which is the same thickness for me. In DK weight yarn, a triple folded brim is the same thickness as a quadruple folded brim in fingering weight yarn. Then once you get to the top of the hat, you do this 4-section crown decrease. And another thing that I love about the Oslo hat is that it's snug to your head. So I don't love when beanies have a ton of extra room at the top of your head. And this pattern is really easy to make snug to your head. I actually knit this specific beanie for Max's dad because last year Max was wearing one of his beanies that I crocheted him around the holidays, and his dad said, oh my goodness, I would love a merino beanie. Not like specifically asking me for one, but I just know that he will appreciate a hand knit merino wool beanie. So this was originally for him in this beautiful charcoal gray color. But then Max tried it on right when I was done with it. I was like, this is your beanie. He loved it so much. I loved it on him so much. So yes, this is now Max's beanie. He wears it all the time. I knit this on 3.5mm needles, which is what the pattern calls for. And I knit it in a size small. Max has a pretty small head, but not, okay. Here's the thing about this beanie. I knit it in a size small because I was worried that superwash would stretch a lot. Actually, I know for a fact that this specific superwash was going to stretch a lot. And Max has a pretty small head and it fits him perfectly. And then my mom also tried it on and she has a much bigger head and it also fits her perfectly. So I'm thinking, why would you ever knit this pattern in not the size small? Because the size small has the least amount of, like the stitch count is the lowest. So it goes quicker because there's less stitches per round. Especially because it fits like both a small head and what I would consider a large head. Sorry, Mom, I know. But you know, you have a large head. Yeah, that's just my little piece of advice. If you're knitting the Oslo hat, I really think that the size small will fit most people. I don't know why. Even though it's stockinette, it's not even a ribbed beanie. It just fits everybody so well. Everybody that's tried this on looks amazing in this beanie. Maybe it's also the color. I love this gray. I know that like knitting with gray yarn is kind of drab, but it makes such a nice finished object. Max tells people that I made this for him and they're like, no way, you didn't buy that. It looks machine made, which is, I don't know if that's a compliment or if it's like, why did I spend 10 hours knitting this when I could just buy a beanie? No, I'm kidding. I love knitting and I will forever knit as opposed to buy. It's kind of a problem because everything I see, I'm like, I could make that. So this is my first Oslo hat. I then knit another Oslo hat for my mom. My mom tried on that beanie. She loved it so much that then she was like, I want one. So then I knit her an Oslo hat, which in my family, well, maybe this is just a me thing. I can never wait to give gifts to people. I need to give it to them like immediately. As soon as I finish something, I need to give it to them. So it's her holiday gift, but she got it in November. The second Oslo hat went even quicker than the first. I think I knit it in like 6 hours. So the first one took me maybe 10 hours. The second one took me 6 hours. I knit it on the plane to and from New York, which was a trip with her. So that was cool. She was like sitting next to me while I was knitting her little beanie. I did knit this in Drops Lima. So that was the leftover yarn from my Esther sweater. And unfortunately, it's too itchy for her too. So this is like a beanie that she wears when she says, I'll wear it when I'm getting in the car and going somewhere. And I'm thinking, Mom, but I want you to wear it. I want you to want to keep it on. I don't want it to be itchy. So I might knit her another one day and gift the Drops Lima one to somebody who has a little bit higher tolerance for wool. Because I've been talking about Drops Lima so much, Drops Lima is 75% wool, 25% alpaca, I think. So it does have alpaca in it, which is why I thought it would be softer when I originally bought it, but it's still too itchy because of all that wool. And it's not superwash, it's a regular wool yarn. The second Oslo hat went swimmingly. Love that pattern so much that I decided to make a third one. So this is my third Oslo hat. This is also knit in Drops Extrafine Merino. So the first one and the third one are knit in the same yarn in this forest green color. I knit this for Max's brother, which I don't think he watches my YouTube videos. There's no reason for him to know that these even exist, so I'm not worried about him knowing. And that's because, like I said, everybody's getting a hat for the holidays. Again, the pattern went super smoothly. This one, again, took me maybe like 6 or 7 hours to knit. And I am planning to knit 1, 2, 3 more of them before the holidays. So that's a total of 6 Oslo hats for the people that I love. My next beanie is a self-drafted pattern. So I made this up. This is a Tunisian crochet beanie. I got into Tunisian crochet last winter before I even started knitting. Like Tunisian crochet was kind of the impetus to me deciding that yes, I do want to knit because it's a blend of knitting and crochet, and I was like, oh my goodness, yes, I do like knitting. Even though Tunisian crochet isn't knitting, you're picking up stitches and then casting off stitches in every row, so it's kind of more like knitting than crochet. Anyway, I knit Max a Tunisian crochet beanie last year. Maybe I'll go get it. Hang on. This Tunisian crochet beanie last February. And I made this up myself. I basically just knit a rectangle and then seamed it up the side and then closed up the top. And I really love the waffle stitch like pattern that Tunisian crochet makes, and it's also super quick because crochet is much faster than knitting. But because I seamed it up the back, you can see the seam right here, and it's kind of pulling apart at the brim, which I do not like. Max doesn't mind. He actually wears this beanie all the time. He loves it. This is also wool. I don't remember what wool it is. Sorry. But I really thought that I could improve. So this year I made it my mission to improve this hat pattern. This is my second attempt because I figured out how to Tunisian crochet in the round. And if you want a tutorial on how I'm doing this, actually, once I figure out the beanie, I'm definitely gonna make a video showing you how to do it. Like, it will be a pattern at some point once I figure this out, because it's a very cool hat. Like, I really, really like it, and I really like the texture. Originally, this one was gonna be for my mom because she sent me this inspo photo like years ago asking me if I could somehow make something like this, and I thought I could make that because, again, I look at things that are knit or crochet and I think I could make that, even though sometimes I can't, like as in the case with this beanie. So this is not quite like that photo, but it's close enough. And I think that the waffle situation is really cool. I also took what I've learned from all of my hats that I've knit in the decrease situation. So on this first pattern, I kind of just like decreased randomly until it was small enough at the top. There was no rhyme or reason, and because it's all the same color, you can't see the decreases, so it's totally fine. But this one, because it's two different colors, you can definitely see the decreases. So I did 4 decreases, just like in my Oslo hat and my Musselburgh hat, and I left 1 stitch in the middle, but that's causing these stitches, or this line, to be closer to the center than this line because of the way that the Tunisian crochet stitches wrap around each other, and I don't love that. So I decided that in my next sample, I would get rid of this center one and just do a decrease directly followed by another decrease. Another thing that I did with this sample is I crocheted this way, and then I did a turn. It's like kind of a short row turn. Where is it? Short row turn-ish situation, so that then the waffle pattern continued on this side, so that when you fold up the brim, it's all the same waffle situation everywhere. Please ignore my ends that I have not woven in, which I like. I do like the beanie like this, but I asked on TikTok if people thought that I should do it like this or if I should not do that short row turn and just keep the stripes on the outside so that the brim would be striped and the hat part would be the waffle. And it was kind of 50-50. So because this was so hard to do, like just turn it around, I also decided to just let the stripes be on the brim for my second sample, which I'll show you in a second. The problem with this beanie is that it's too big. It's too big for everyone. Like this beanie is massive. Maybe I'll put this one on. I know I didn't put any other ones on, but I'll put this one on. It is, it is too big. Like I don't like the way the crown looks at the top. It's slouchy, but not in a cool way. I don't know. I also, when you Tunisian crochet, you need to use a hook that's much bigger than the yarn recommends. So my chain to start crocheting is too loose and it kind of like flares out, which I don't like. So yes, those were all the things that I learned from this first sample that I will eventually frog and probably turn into another hat, because I needed to have this sample made so I could reference it for my second sample, because I'm not following a pattern, I'm like making this up. So okay, here is my second sample, and can you see the size difference? I way overcompensated. This is too big, this is too small. Not only is this too small, like too tight, but it's also too small in length. I don't know, I got bored. I didn't get bored. I got impatient and I just wanted to close it up at the top. So I started decreasing way too soon. I think actually, but not only did I decrease too soon, it's also too tight this way. So yeah, there's lots of stuff that needs to be amended for the third version, which I have yet to make. I haven't made the third version yet. There she is. And I really like the striped on the brim and the waffle on the head. I think it looks really cool. And I think I'm actually going to make this hat in a white and this green for my brother. He's really cool. He can wear cool stuff like this, and he's been asking for that colorway for a long time now. But this hat is so small that, like, here, I'll try to put it on, but it's like, I can get it on my head, but it's too small. Like, you can see the stretches, the stretches. You can see the stitches stretching over my head. It looks like I have a bald cap on. Not very cute. So, for my third sample, I am planning to go up hook sizes. I used a 5.5 millimeter and 6 millimeter Tunisian crochet hooks for this one. I used the 6 millimeter for the pickup stitches and the 5.5 for the return pass. And I think I'm going to go up to a 6 and 6.5. I'm also going to do, well, I don't know. Do you think I should go up in hook size, or do you think I should increase the number of stitches in the round? Because I also think that this looks really neat. Like, I like the ratio of burgundy to white here. So actually, okay, sorry, I've made my decision. I'm not going to go up in hook size. I am going to go up in the number of stitches in the round so that the circumference is bigger. I think I did 80 for this one, but it needs to be multiple of 4, so I'll do 84 for the next one. I'm also definitely going to make it longer, of course, before I start decreasing so that this brim can be thicker and it like sits better on your head. Yeah, I haven't gotten around to doing this because I've been so frustrated with this pattern. I also realized I don't like Tunisian crochet as much as I like knitting, so I would, every time I have a chance to sit down and do some sort of fiber arts, I always choose to knit rather than crochet. But I do need to do this one because I'm making a hat for my brother for the holidays. So he's getting a hat that will look something like this. That is all my finished objects over the last 4 months. Let's move on to my whips, which right now I only have one whip to show you. This is my front porch sweater, which is a pattern by, I think his name is Kevin. His username is Pearl Jam, Pearl __ Jam. Pearl as in the knitting, purling, P-U-R-L, and then jam, but like the band Pearl Jam, but pearl, knitting pearl. I don't know. It's very cool, very cutesy little pun that you did there, Kevin. I love it. This is the front porch sweater. It's an all over cabled sweater, but it's alternating cable and rib. So like you do cable, 2x2 rib, cable, 2x2 rib, all over. This is the same construction as my Esther sweater. So you cast on at the back of the neck, you do some increases to make this trapezoidal situation until you get right underneath the armpits. You pick up stitches here to make the shoulders. Then you do some shaping and attach it right underneath the neck. Then you knit the front panel, attach it underneath the arms, knit the body in a tube. Then I'll do the ribbing. Then I'll do the sleeves. Then I'll pick up the collar, and it'll look like this photo that's right here of the front porch sweater. Okay, this pattern is quite confusing. The charts that are in the pattern were hard to figure out at first, so much so that I am not even following the charts. I'm just looking at the photos of the sweaters to figure out when I'm supposed to cable, and I'm just using the photo. I'm referencing the photos more than the pattern. I really wish that the chart started, like the first row of the chart was your cast on row, the second row of the chart was your setup row, the third row of the chart was the first time you do the cable pattern, but it has some like weird referencing where there's notes that tell you that the 6th or 7th row of the chart is the first time you do the cable. Anyway, it's just really confusing. I wish that the chart lined up with what you were actually knitting. I also feel like there's a lot of notes all over the pattern that are there to make it more clear, but it just makes it more confusing because it's a lot of extra information that I feel like I already knew, but then the fact that I read it made it more confusing. I'm not the only one who feels this way. I posted a lot about this on TikTok, and people who are making it right now, or who have made it previously, or who have made it and stopped knitting it, have also said that they found the pattern really confusing. So I'm wondering if maybe, I don't know, Kevin, if you're watching this, but I have many suggestions for how to improve the pattern. Now that I've figured it out and gotten to this part in it. It's mostly just like when you first start the cable situation, it's really confusing, but after you figure it out, then you can look at the photos to like figure out the rest of the construction. That combined with the fact that I just knit the Esther sweater, which is constructed exactly the same way, that's the only reason I have gotten this far. This is my first time doing cables, which is so much fun. I love cable knitting until I get to a cable row, and then I hate cable knitting. I hate making the cable. I love knitting cables. Does that make any sense? Does anybody agree with me on that? So I bought a cable needle to do the cables initially because this is my first time knitting cables. Actually, first I was using an extra, one of my knitting needles for my interchangeable set, but it was like, I couldn't knit off of both ends of that needle. So then I bit the bullet and I spent the $2 on the cable needle at my yarn store. And I was using that for a while, but the cable needle like gets in the way of knitting. My cable needle is plastic, but my knitting needles are bamboo. And it was just like not a very fun experience to like finagle all the needles around each other with all the yarn. So then after watching many reels on this over the last couple months, I decided to try to cable without a cable needle and just like dropping all the stitches and picking up the ones that needed to be picked up on both needles and transferring them. And it works. And I have done probably since like here without a cable needle. And it's a more enjoyable process. Still not the most fun to do the cable just because of like the anxiety of dropping stitches every single time. It's definitely improved my confidence in my knitting abilities to know that, okay, if a stitch drops, I can fix it. Like it's not the end of the world if a stitch drops down a couple rows. I really can fix it. I'm teaching my mom how to knit. She's knitting her first step-by-step sweater, and we were sitting there knitting next to each other the other night, and I was like dropping stitches off my needle, and she's like, what are you doing? With a big gasp of, oh my God, you're gonna ruin everything. But yeah, it's pretty crazy when you realize it's actually not that big of a deal to drop stitches. It's totally fixable. Other than my qualms with the pattern and the whole cable needle situation, which I figured out, I love this sweater. So let me talk about the yarn. I am knitting this in Knitting for Olive. I know, very fancy. I'm knitting this in Knitting for Olive Merino, the fingering version of the Merino, in the color Bordeaux, and the soft silk mohair in the color Claret. I'm knitting it on, what size needles are these? 4mm needles, which is what the pattern calls for. I actually didn't gauge swatch, so that's just, we'll see how it turns out. The only project that I've used Knitting for Olive for previously was my Oslo hat that I knit in the Knitting for Olive Heavy Merino. And that hat is itchy but bearable on my head, like bearable, I could wear it all day bearable, but I definitely feel it there, like it's not soft. And I have heard so many incredible things about the Knitting for Olive Merino and soft silk mohair combination. Like people knit everything in this. And I've seen so many people wear it close to skin that I figured surely it'll be good. Surely it'll be fine. It's not fine. This is itchy for me. So that's a bummer. Let me know if it's itchy for you too. I feel like I'm the only one who has this much of a problem with wool. It's really like an unfortunate life event to be a knitter and not be able to wear wool next to your skin. But I'm knitting it anyway. I'll wear a shirt underneath the sweater. I bought a sweater's quantity worth of this yarn. It was not cheap, you know, it's like real legit stuff. I don't know what, I wouldn't like using it for another project later would have the same issue. And I love the color that it's making together so much. This burgundy is my favorite color. I own everything in this color and I haven't knit anything for myself in this color yet because if I let myself choose this color every time I have the urge to choose this color, everything I own would be this color. So I thought that, okay, if I'm gonna buy from Knitting for Olive, it's special yarn, I'm gonna get the color that I know I love. It's a bummer that it's itchy, but I think I'll survive. Now let me give you a little update as to where I am currently in the pattern. I tried this on last night, 2 nights ago. I don't really remember when that was. And the armhole is too deep, which some people told me also happened to them when they were knitting this pattern. I really don't love a deep armhole, but I also don't love when the body is so big and the arms are skinny and it's like, the arms need to be proportional to the oversizedness of the body. I know that when I block this, the body is gonna stretch outwards because it's like a mix of cable and ribs, so it's gonna go this way when I block it. And I also know that it's probably gonna stretch a little bit further down too when I block it. So the armhole really is too deep. The more I knit, the more the fabric weighs it down. So I haven't even knit like all the cables and the ribbing at the bottom. It's just gonna keep pulling it down. So I thought maybe one way to fix this, which this is gonna sound really complicated. I thought maybe I could pick up stitches 1 cable repeat above the armhole here, and then pick up stitches right at the armhole and then frog the in between the two and then graft them together somehow. But then my mom's friend, who's a genius, was like, why are you gonna do that if you could just make a little patch underneath the arm and patch up to like here? So, and not have to re-knit all this and then have to knit another row on the bottom to make it longer again. Okay, so that's what I'm gonna do. I think what I'm actually gonna do is I'm gonna pick up stitches right above this cable that goes underneath the armpit. And I'm gonna knit the cable, 1 more cable repeat up and then bind off right here. And then I'm gonna whip stitch it to the sides right here. And that'll make the armpit there before I pick up stitches for the sleeves. I'm thinking I'm only gonna do that 1 cable up, but I don't know, should I do it 2 cables up? Like, do you think that the sleeve going up to here would be short enough, or should I do it 2 cable repeats up to there? What I learned with my Esther sweater is that blocking, I could really make it whatever dimensions I want. If it's too small, like if the if the armhole is too high, I can get it to drop down easier. But if it's too low, there's no way for me to get it to go up higher. So what do you think I should do? Should I do 1 cable repeat or 2 cable repeats when I patch it up? I kind of have the goal that I want to finish this before Thanksgiving, which today is November 18th, 17th? I think it's the 17th. Today is November 17th. That gives me until November 26th or something, 27th. That's 10 days to finish this. And really, I want to wear it to a Friendsgiving that I'm going to on the 23rd, which is 6 days. I don't think that's very reasonable, but it's like a little goal that I have in my head. We'll see if that happens. Yeah, here's my one current work in progress. And I think that that's enough about that. I think that we should move on with our lives. Now on to my upcoming plans. I'm really sorry if you can hear people walking and talking above me. Let's wrap up this episode, yeah? Okay, because Max took his dad's hat in this gray color, I needed to get more yarn for his dad's hat. And I really want to make his dad a gray beanie. I just feel like he'll wear it so much. He is a very, like, it'll just go with everything that he has, and I know that he'll wear it every single day. Because this yarn is a little itchy, I didn't want to reorder this exact same color, and I didn't necessarily want Max and his dad to have matchy hats. You know, they could be matching, but why not get to use a new yarn? If I'm going to make a gray hat, why not get to like try out a new fiber? So I got Blue Sky Fibers Woolstock worsted in the color Cast Iron, beautiful heather gray yarn. I got 2 hanks, which is a total of 100 grams, which is exactly how much I used for the other Oslo hats that I've made, so I know this will be enough. This is a worsted weight, and the pattern calls for a DK weight, but I think it'll just be like a little bit plusher, denser fabric, which is totally fine for a beanie. The reason I got this yarn is because I made a TikTok asking people what yarn they recommend that's soft enough to wear close to skin, what wool yarn they recommend that's soft enough to wear close to skin. And Blue Sky Fibers came up a couple times, but I also want to ask you in this video, help me out as somebody with a sensitivity to wool. What yarn do you recommend? What wool yarn should I knit with so that I can actually wear the things that I knit? Thanks in advance. That's one Oslo hat in the making. Another Oslo hat that I'm going to make is in this Drops Merino Extrafine in this navy blue color, but this is almost like a vibrant navy blue, which I have never seen before. I love this color, and this Oslo hat is going to be for Max's sister-in-law. I guess it's like kind of my sister-in-law too, although Max and I are not married. And I just think that this color will look beautiful on her. So she's getting this color, her husband is getting this color. They're going to be cute little matchy-matchy with their Oslo hats. Max's whole family is going to be kitted out in Oslo hats. Okay, I am also going to make my brother my Tunisian crochet hat in the Drops Extrafine Merino in the army green and the cream color. So imagine this hat, but in these colors, and all the issues that I talked about earlier fixed for him. Those are my plans for right now. That means I have 3 more Oslo hats to make, plus a 4th one actually that I want to make for my dad, but I have yet to buy yarn for him for that because I know that he wants a merino wool, but I need to make sure that it's not itchy. My whole family, my mom, my dad, and I all have very sensitive noggins, very sensitive heads. I don't want to use an acrylic. I don't want to use a wool blend. He is somebody who deserves a merino wool hat. For real, for real. So again, if you have any yarn recommendations, please, please, please comment them. Okay, that was a lot. Thank you so much if you stuck with me all the way until the end of this video. I appreciate you so much. I plan to get back into podcasting, hopefully maybe every 2 or 3 weeks I'll put out a video. Of course, I'm always so curious what you're knitting right now, what you're planning to knit for the holidays, or what you are knitting for the holidays. They're coming up real soon. Yeah, thanks for hanging out with me. I'll see you in the next one.